I'm John Jackson with Great Lakes United, and following up on somewhat Teresa talked about, but what I really want to focus on is, I've been hearing a fair bit come out this afternoon in terms of the frustration with some of the limitations in terms of what is covered by the Source Water Protection Committees, what's covered by the Clean Water Act, and so on. And I really am wanting to, in this presentation, sort of reinforce that need to keep our eyes open broader and to make sure we're still working on those other water issues and recognizing the connection between other policies that the government is making, the provincial government is making, that they don't directly relate as water policies, but which do have a dramatic impact upon water. And therefore, that we need to be making sure that the government is integrating the proper issues in terms of understanding if we want to really take care of water. I want to first just give a quick sort of bureaucratic sort of glitch that we keep running into. And Teresa referred to the water quantity agreement between the two provinces and the 8 Great Lakes states. And one of the odd bureaucratic things in that whole thing was that the lead in the negotiation of that agreement was the Ministry of Natural Resources. The implementation is primarily responsibility of Ministry of the Environment. And in the process of making that transition has been quite painful, because it was very clear that the MOE people were on a quick learning curve because they hadn't been part of the negotiation. Seriously, they had one person sort of attended meetings, but hadn't been as immersed in it, didn't fully understand what was in the agreement, and didn't fully understand why certain things were in the agreement, what led to the things that were there. And it's been a very difficult transition, but it's a typical example of where we run into difficulties in terms of the same government, it's the provincial government, integrating its programs with each other. And in terms of the Great Lakes, we have this bizarre situation where both M&R and the Ministry of the Environment have a Great Lakes office. And to be quite honest, when you talk with them, they don't really like each other. And they don't hesitate to criticize each other and sort of blame what's happening on the other. You know, we always say, well, that's between the feds and the province. It happens between the ministries as well, within the same government. And you know, we really feel very strongly that you need to be if you really care about the Great Lakes, you need to be making that an office in the Premier's office. And we look at the example in Michigan, for example, where for a long time, their office of the Great Lakes is part of the governor's office and has been a very powerful body because of that, and has avoided, or at least been able to overcome those sorts of conflicts. So that sort of integrating is so hard, and that's just sort of a simple bureaucratic aspect of it. What I want to talk about is first of all, this issue, and I'm sort of glad it came back up out of the most recent discussion. It was there before in terms of water budgets and this sort of, you know, how much water can we use and so on. And I really fear that leads us down a path to doom. And part of it is because we have so many unknowns in terms of what water is there today and what water will be there in the future because of all the climate change aspects. In addition, when we're developing our water budgets, are we really taking into account fully the needs of nature, of the other animals that we share this home with? Are we really fully taking into account the importance of the natural flows and everything else in terms of having that happen? And so it seems to me that we have a responsibility to make sure that we're standing back instead of saying, okay, how much water is there, and therefore make sure we're not going to go over that quantity of water, is to instead say, what are we doing to make sure that we don't use more water than we need to? And that means looking seriously, much more seriously, and requiring, legally, conservation. And I mean by that going far beyond our current approach to, you know, low-flow toilets and all those nice things, and the shower heads, etc., but to going to saying reuse, you know, recycling the water, putting the water back through the system a couple of times, you know, redesigning our institutional setups in terms of the plumbing and so on in our homes, in terms of, you know, using the high-quality water only for the drinking water, quality water, only for the things that need drinking water quality. And we need to start changing, our building codes and all those other things to do it. But my fear is that when we get ourselves down into the discussion of the water budget and the implication then that I can use up that amount and it's okay, that we're really misleading ourselves and we're not really being responsible members of the environment, which has a lot more people, well not people, a lot more creatures living in it than just us, as well as all the unknowns. And any hydrogeologist, for example, will tell you, even though we drill whatever number of test wells, it's still guesswork what's really down there. We can't really be sure, as well as what may change, especially with climate change. So I think that we as a province should be setting a goal, which is to say, we need to, whatever growth or development happens, industrial, residential, whatever, that we have to be doing it within the existing amount of water that we use. And we have the capacity to do that. Because if we got serious about conservation, if we got serious about water reuse, we can easily cut, and there are all kinds of examples of this in other parts of the world, where you can easily cut the use by 50%. They did a lot of studies on that really make it very clear you can do it. But this idea again of water budget, I think, puts us in the wrong frame of mind. So I'd like to see the provincial government set a target, which is to say, no increased use of water, or indeed, even better in my mind, is let's start reducing the total amount of water that we're using. And the problem is that when we set targets like that, usually what we do it in waste. I've done a lot of work in waste for people who know me. And the classic thing we do is say, yes, a reduction per capita, which means you still increase the amount of waste you generate because of population growth. Well, I don't want us setting targets like that for water, and that's what we tend to be doing, is use per household reduction. And that, with growth, means we still end up using more water. It's not getting us where we need to go, which is that cap of the entire total use. And technically, it's there. Technically, we have all the methods to do it. We just have to start putting our priority on it. We need to start changing the legislation and the building codes, etc., to allow that and to push that to happen or force it to happen. And financial support to make the transitions and so on as well. But that, to me, is the critical thing we need to do if we're going to take care of the source water protection.